Hello.
Hello, world.
It's Genna.
And Noreen. I was going to say Nav. Oh, my God.
Let's keep that in. Yeah, we're here for another episode of This Way Up.
Yay.
Speaking of This Way Up, you know what's not up? The frickin' temperature. How cold did it get so soon?
Ridiculous.
It's freezing. It's depressing.
I have my winter jacket out.
I don't yet, but that's because I'm always unprepared.
Yeah.
I need to get that out.
I literally missed the whole fall coat phase. Because
there was no fall coat phase.
It went from really hot to disgustingly cold. So.
Do you get the urge to also like shop for a new jacket every year? Like what happens there?
I did get a new one.
Did you? Okay, I figured.
Did.
I have the urge every year and I'm like, come on, relax.
Yeah.
Kenna. Do you really have to? Come on.
I have a huge jacket collection.
I love that.
Yeah, I shouldn't though. I don't need that many jackets.
I think it's nice.
Yeah.
I see, you know what? Purchases like that are totally justifiable because if you look good, you feel good. At the end of the day, everything you purchase is but an investment in your mental health.
That is true.
Is that
I do
not
agree.
Yeah, exactly.
That is very valid.
Speaking of looking good and feeling good, I think we should talk about like a cool thing that came up in our little sauna session a week ago. We had the best sauna session, like a very like mindful, like meditation based thing we went to. We talked about like feeling good about compliments, taking compliments, but then we also talked about taking criticism, not even criticism, but like feedback. So maybe we can talk about that. I don't know exactly what we were talking about, but maybe we'll start there. I've always found that it is very difficult for me to take compliments. Is that a you thing? Is that a me thing? Is that an everybody thing? What do you think?
I definitely agree. I also struggle to take compliments.
Yeah.
Like, I know from the receiving end, you're supposed to say thank you, but I almost can't.
I can't say thank you either.
It's weird.
It's hard for me.
Don't know what to say.
It's like I've gotten better at it because as an adult being socialized into like the real world, you feel like, okay, the right response is now thank you. So I've learned to say thank you. But when I get a compliment, it's like, like, I don't know what exactly to say. So I just force a thank you, but it feels really hard. Why do you think it feels so hard to take a compliment?
I think it goes back to us being our biggest critiques. Yeah. Like, I feel like we critique ourselves so much that when someone compliments us, it feels...
Do you think it's like, imposter syndrome? Is that what it is?
I think it is imposter syndrome, but it's always like, it's also like to yourself or to myself when we receive a compliment, it's like in my head, no, I can do better than what you just complimented me on.
Really?
This doesn't seem... Like, I'm not there yet to be complimented for this. Like, I think I can do much better and be at like, there's more I can do to be valued for that compliment.
Like, you have to earn the compliment, and you feel like you haven't earned the compliment yet. That's interesting. That's actually a really good take. For me, I think when I get a compliment, what it comes across is like, oh my God, haha, like shyness, or almost like, oh no, don't worry. No, not me, stop. Is more like lack of belief. I think it's straight up like, nah, I don't believe you. Like part of me is like, I don't believe you. You know, that kind of a thing. But I think that's also imposter syndrome. It feels like, okay, well, maybe comparisons come into play. You're like, oh yeah, but no, there's so much like nicer or better or smarter or funnier out there. So like, do you really mean that? Yeah. But I think that's it's such an important skill. I feel like no one talks about this skill enough, but you have to be able to take a compliment, don't you think?
I agree. And it's really funny and ironic that you mentioned you get shy, because I feel the same way when I get compliments. I get really shy or just kind of brush it off. Right. But that's not how we are as people. Like, neither of us are shy. Neither of us are like quiet or like very like, you know, not receptive to things. Like, we're very outgoing, very extroverted people. So when it comes down to compliments, it's like a personality shift. It's really strange.
And we like cling to coping mechanisms. My biggest coping mechanism and strategy when I get a compliment is to flip it around.
I do
that
thing.
Where it's like, oh, Genna, you look really good. You look really good.
I do. Are
you
the
serious?
Same thing.
Look at you. I flip the compliment around a lot. But it's, I don't think it's healthy. I think, seriously, we need to be able to take a compliment. I think it comes down to reaffirming that belief in the compliment. And I've always said this. I think it's come up with multiple friends of mine. You know, I've had these discussions. In fact, I met a friend over the weekend that I hadn't seen in like over a decade, and we were talking, and I just said, I think compliments are kind of a twofold concept. You want to be surrounded by people that compliment you because you want to feel appreciated, you want to feel praised, you want to feel valued by the people around you. But B, you want to be in a state where you're primed to take a compliment. Compliments aren't just the complimenter's responsibility. I think there's also an onus on the complimentee to be able to take the compliment, to be in a frame of mind where they're like, I am primed to accept this compliment. I will take it for what it is. I will believe and have faith in what you're saying and say to myself, this is a genuine thing coming from someone. Let's take it like that.
I have like now that I'm thinking about it, I have a very weird outlook on being like, or I guess like how I end up receiving the compliment. I feel as if I like brush it off and I don't take the compliment, it may come off as like, oh, like, haha, like, thank you, but like not really. And it comes kind of pick me. But then if I just take the compliment, like, am I a bitch? Like, you know?
That's so true. I'm so glad you mentioned that. The pick me concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a good point. But also, I think it's so silly. I think you should be able to take the compliment, right? But I do understand that perception where it's like, yeah, am I cocky for just taking the compliment right up front?
Exactly.
Do I think so highly of myself that it's just another day, another compliment, and, you know? But I think it's so silly. I think it's not about cockiness. I think it's just about confidence in yourself. It's about graciousness, that you're able to accept that from somebody. And I think it's something I'm working on a lot. Like, I force myself to be like, say thank you. Do not flip it around. Absolutely give a compliment, for sure, but don't flip it around. Say thank you, accept it, move on, you know?
Yeah.
However uncomfortable it feels, take the compliment.
Yeah, it's really strange. Like, I think, like, for me, I try my best. I also do the thing where I flip it around on the other person. And now that I think of it, like, as we're speaking about this, retrospectively looking at it, when we flip it around, I know we do mean it, but it's like, is it that we would have said it to begin with if we weren't complimented
ourselves?
first?
It comes across ingenuine. I get that completely.
Yeah.
I think the same can be said about feedback. How do you feel like you take feedback better than you take compliments? By feedback, I mean like constructive feedback, like, hey, for next time, be it a guided thing, like, oh, this is a session where we're giving feedback, or just an unprompted piece of feedback. Do you feel like you take that better than compliments?
A lot better.
Okay.
I find that I actually go out of my way to ask for feedback, and sometimes I don't even end up receiving feedback. I'll like maybe receive feedback in the form of a compliment, and I'm like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. How can I improve? And
you're like, don't tell me anything nice about me. I want to hear everything wrong with what I just did.
Like, how could I be better all the time? Like, I see myself going out of my way to ask for feedback to everybody, not just my managers, not just people I work with, but my friends, like everyone that I'm close to. And it's really interesting because I'm like consistently looking for feedback and ways to improve myself. But on the flip side, when it comes to compliments, I'm like, I'm not there yet. You can't compliment me. I'm not there yet. Like,
I want to be the best before you earn your compliment.
Exactly.
I want to earn your compliment. Yeah. I think, I don't know, like, that's really cool. And I feel that. I feel like I'm in the same boat in that I'm constantly seeking, okay, no, but what can I do better?
Yeah.
Because I don't give enough attention to those, the piece of positive feedback. Hey, like, you did this really, really well. But I'm also in a space, I think, where I'm trying to be better at handling feedback too. Because as much as I seek it out, as much as I'm like, give me what I need to work on, and then I go ahead and work on it, I think a part of me takes it as, you're not doing this right. It doesn't take it as, hey, here's a cool opportunity to make things better, or like to work on this. I think I've started to take it as a, oh man, I'm not doing this thing right. So I think that's also my focus right now, to reframe feedback and not take it as, okay, this is what I'm lacking, but this is this cool opportunity to work on something. And I remember you said that to me in the sauna, like, little session we had, and you were like, take it as a challenge, take it as your next task, your next to-do. Right. And I think within means, like within like safe means where it doesn't feel like you're constantly reaching and not acknowledging where you are. But I like that. Take it as a challenge. Right.
Something I've learned a lot in the last couple, I want to say years, like it's definitely something that's built up over time, is learning how to reframe things in your life. And I think it really sucks sometimes. We end up in a really shitty place. We end up in a really not so happy space mindset in our heads, and sometimes it's really tough to get out of. And I've learned the only way to get out of it is if I believe in myself that I'm able to get out of it or I'm able to change it. And all it really takes is reframing how you look at things. It's always coming down to reframing the way you look at it. Like, I know that there's been times in the past where I wanted something to go a certain way and it didn't. And I can definitely sit there and sulk on the feeling and feel absolute shit about it. But it's not going to help me, right? So I have to reframe it and look at it. Okay, well, it didn't work out this time. Let's see what we can do to make it better. Let's see how we can fix the situation. Not even fix it. How can we make the most out of the situation? I realize it's a lot about reframing things and not so much about I'm not good enough. I'm not doing good. I need to be better. Like,
it is so crazy how much the inner voice will impact you. It is so crazy how much that instinctive thought you say to yourself after something happens will impact you. I think it's simultaneously the hardest thing in the world, but also the easiest thing in the world when you think about it, to reframe things and to change your outlook on things completely. Because it just takes saying the right things to yourself for you to be able to completely see something differently. And I think I've been practicing that so much in the last few weeks, and it's been blowing my mind how saying something assuring to yourself and affirming to yourself can completely change your outlook on things. It's very powerful. I know it sounds cheesy and corny and like, oh yeah, everyone says that, but holy shit, it has made a world of a difference, at least for me, in terms of being okay with specifically like making errors. I'm like a lot more forgiving. I think we grow up in an environment where it's very like, oh, like you could do better. Or like, I feel maybe it's an immigrant thing. Maybe it's not. You break a freaking piece of glass or something and everyone's like, move away. Let me get the freaking jaru. Let me like get it out of the way. Right. But I think that little thing will condition you. All the times you mess up and there's a negative reaction from people growing up, that will condition you. So I've actively started to put this idea into my head when I mess up, where I'm like, my first thought has to be, it's okay. So I'm like consciously saying that to myself. I'm like, oh, it's cool. You're new. You didn't know that. Oh, it's cool. No one expected that of you. It's fine. You think you have to do that, but no one really expects that from you. It's fine. So my first thought is always, it's okay now, you know?
I think it all just falls back into the inner voice. Like, you speak about how so much of it can be impacting the way you look at life. And I've actually been practicing changing the way I look at things. And just gonna do a little bit of a shout out, but this is shout out to you and my mom, because I really appreciate and respect the way both of you look at the world and how you address situations. And it's really inspiring, because sometimes I feel like I suck at looking at things in a more opportunist way. Like, sometimes I sit there and I'm like, damn, I really wish this would have went better, like how I expected it to. And I used to sulk on that feeling a lot. And I realized that it's not doing much for me except keeping me stagnated in this space. And when I look at the way my mom deals with the situations in her life, and also yourself, like, this open-mindedness you have when you're looking at the world has been so inspiring to me in the last like few years.
That's so sweet.
But I made an effort. I made an effort to switch that for myself. And of course, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time, a lot of reframing, a lot of rewiring in your head. But I'm so glad I made that intentional change, because I can't even go back to the way that I used to think anymore, even if I tried. And this was something I actually learned in one of my therapy sessions. My therapist was like, hey, I know you may have tendencies to think things a certain way. And it's like your brain, I'm going to make a little engineering reference, like electrical circuits will take the shortest path. And your brain works the same way. Because you've used the path of thinking like negatively so much, it's just going to take that route. And it's really difficult when you're trying to change it. But once you change it, you can't go back, because now this is the new path you form, which is just the easiest, the fastest route you can take to think of things or like life or situations. So
That's crazy.
I really like that. Yeah.
That's crazy that to your brain and all like the circuit-like mechanisms in your brain, the easiest path is something that ideally in our like more macro world is also like the best thing for us.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think I've always been this way. You know me. For me, I call it the glass shatter moment. I've said this to people time and time again. For me, it's the glass shatter moment. When I've been dealing with something, someone, any situation for a long time, and I come to the point where I'm like, this is not serving me, it might take me months, it might take me weeks to get there. But when I get there and I realize for a second, this isn't serving me, the glass shatters, period, done. And I can never look at the situation the same again. It's so weird. I can just not do it. And you know this. It's very like absolute for me.
Yes.
Once I go past that glass shatter moment, that's it.
That's
so
it.
It's so funny that you like, yeah, I guess on a very like micro scale like that with the mechanisms going on in our head, like this could also scientifically be a thing, right? The path of least resistance, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that because I think changing the way you view things in your life, situations, I think the way you view situations plays a huge effect and impact into how you deal with them as well, and how like you decide to be actionable about it, because I think that really makes such a big difference. But as soon as my mindset just switched, it was, I don't know, I felt like my life changed.
It is. It's actually life-changing because it changes how you look at everything. And it's the craziest thing. Again, it just comes down to, at least for me, it's come down to what I say to myself, like instinctively what I tell myself. It's crazy. And I think at the same time, yes, like I said, simultaneously the hardest thing in the world to get yourself to think a certain way. But holy shit, like it's so accessible. The whole point here is that it's so accessible. Anyone, everyone can do it and should do it. Right?
I think it just really takes genuine effort from your own end. Like it's hard. I can't sit here and say it's not hard. It is one of the most difficult things, but it really takes genuine effort. If you really want to, you'll make it. Yeah, you have to want to, not someone else wants you to. Not I should do it. It's I myself
want to do it.
Want to change it.
I want to look at things more positively. So for me, I think the ironic part here is for me, I started looking at things more positively and reframing things through the hardest times ever. Like I think lately in the last few months, I've had the most change and the most, like the hardest things I've had to go through in recent years is probably the stuff I've had to go through now. So it's funny that is when I had the most success in changing the way I view things and being more positive and more forgiving about things. But I think that's connecting to the idea of you have to want it. And I think only when you're going through so much, more than you've ever gone through before, that you want it the most, right? Where you're like, I really want to see things positively. And that is, I think, the biggest piece of evidence right there that you have to want it and you will go and be able to achieve that mindset change.
Yeah. Speaking about wanting it, how did you, like, I know sometimes, I guess like I went through it when I was younger and I would think that I wanted something so badly, but I didn't. Or maybe my intention of wanting something wasn't necessarily correct. And incorrect, I mean like the most genuine way of like wanting something or wanting it for a genuine reason. So how did you really differentiate between wanting something because you genuinely wanted it versus there being, let's just say for lack of a better way of saying it, an ulterior motive as to wanting something?
Like, is it just a short-term, short-lived, I should really do it versus I really want to change the way I look at things? I think, it's been the most change and the most like drastic of changes that I've experienced in the last few months. I think that pushed for it really a lot. And I think the next thing is just like persistence of the desire. Like I think for so long, so much was going on that it persisted. Like every day I'd wake up and I was like, no, like I want to be more forgiving to myself. No, I want to be, better at taking feedback, positive or negative. I think it also, of course, is exposure. When you're surrounded by a very like feedback oriented environment, which I believe I am now with the, path I've gone down work-wise, exposure is a thing, but it's also just persistence of that desire. Like if you keep wanting something every single day and you're very, very authentic about things, I think you're very honest when you reflect on yourself and, you know, you do that introspection. That's how you know it's real. Like, I think you just have to be so freaking honest with your introspection.
Yeah.
And the minute you are, and it, again, that persistence comes in, like every single day you find yourself like, yeah, I want this, I want this. That's how you know it's genuine. And I think it follows. I think the mind is such a powerful thing. It's the craziest thing. You don't think it is.
Yeah.
But it really is, right? Like the littlest of things, the littlest of habits, the most subconscious of things that you say to yourself will have the hugest effect. And I think that was what it was for me. It was just the subtlety, the persistence. I'll say the persistence of that. Like, I want to do this. I want to be better at taking advice. I want to be better at being more positive about the way that I view things.
Yeah.
It was just that, you know?
Yeah. I think that persistence also helps you build those habits subconsciously, though. Because I think a lot of the times we try to consciously make habits happen.
Yeah.
But what I've realized is when I try to make big changes or big habits, like it's way easier for me to fall through on them.
Yeah.
But when I have a larger goal that I want to achieve or this continuous want for something, I'll make little changes in my life and they happen automatically. I'm not trying to make those happen, but it's me looking at the bigger goal, me looking at the end line. I'm like, okay, well, I need to do this, 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 and this to get there. So my mind, my body, my surrounding will just automatically put me in the spaces to ensure I get to that goal or ensure that I get to that space that I want to. It's really subconscious, but when you know you want something, I think your body, your heart, your brain, everything around you will work towards getting you to that space.
I think it's being goal focused. I really think it's being objective and like outcome oriented. The minute you start looking at the outcome and not so much, oh man, I gotta get up early tomorrow. Shit, I gotta get up at 6 a.m. Come on, man. Like the more it's about like, oh, I want to be better at XYZ. Eventually I will be this person that can, you know, do XYZ. Then slowly the actions that you have to do, the motions you have to go through come more naturally because you're so focused on who you want to be and where you want to get.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what I did actually. I kept telling myself, I want to be someone that's so kind to themselves. Like I just want to be so compassionate to myself. So then the littlest of things, like when I got feedback, what I said to myself, when I messed up, that it's okay again, that thing, it came naturally. Because I just wanted to be better to myself and like kinder to myself, you know?
Yeah.
And I think honestly, it's something everyone should learn. And sometimes, I don't know, maybe you feel this way as well. Again, I feel like we're in a position of privilege to be able to sit here and say, you know, I had the opportunity to work on myself mentally, get better, like pay attention to these things. I think like, for instance, our parents, maybe they don't have the time, the capacity to be able to sit there and try and get to that space, right? And do better like that. So sometimes I almost feel like I saw this TikTok recently and it was talking about like immigrant child guilt, where it's like when you have the privilege to do these really cool things, like groundbreaking, life-changing experiences, you know, work on your mental health, for instance, and get to this like really powerful place of being really happy with who you are, being kind to yourself. There's guilt involved. There's guilt involved because you feel bad that your parents, who you want so much for, like they don't have the privilege to kind of do that to the same scale, at least. I'm sure there's intent behind it, and a lot of parents do get to that place. But you know what I mean? They won't be in this comfortable position of sitting on this couch right now and talking about how they've been able to be kinder to themselves. Yeah. When arguably they may need it more than we do.
Yeah. No, I completely get it. And I know like the guilt that you're speaking about, I feel it in the sense like sometimes when I go do something, I used to feel this so much as a kid and I still do now. I'll go do something for the first time and I feel guilty that the first time I'm doing it is not with my parents.
Yes.
It's with my friends or it's with somebody else, like my brother or something. It's not with my parents. And it feels really guilty and like I want to do everything and share everything, like all the fun experiences that I have, all the cool things that I get to do, all the cool places that I get to go with my parents. And it's just really tough.
Yeah.
And it's really, that guilt really eats you up sometimes. It really, really sucks. And
it does.
And going back to it, like the whole point of being kinder to yourself, it's it's really hard, one, when you have that guilt, but then two, you think about how they could also be kinder to themselves.
And honestly, that's why I said arguably more so than us. Because I do get that sentiment where it's like, oh, fun things, wish they could be involved, fun experiences, wish they could be involved. For me, though, it hits the hardest when I do things like that.
Yeah.
It hits the hardest when I do things like better myself, work on my mental health, get to a place where I feel kinder to myself, more positive about my outlook on the world. That's when I feel the most immigrant child guilt, because I feel like growing up, we've talked about this, how our parents were so focused on putting, food on the table and, making ends meet. I feel like there was so much stress involved with that I think it almost became the path of least resistance to their brains to stress about things, to panic about things, with good reason. Again, I completely see the reason for it. But I think, I feel the most guilt there because it's like they could possibly benefit from getting there mentally, from working on themselves from a mental health perspective and getting to that place of loving yourself, being kinder to yourself. And they would thrive so much. And you just want that for them. But it's like, again, it's that point of privilege. Like, we're sitting here and we're able to discuss this and able to further ourselves in that regard. But they didn't get the same opportunities, maybe at an age where they could give some of these resources to these things. Do you know what I mean? I mean, at a certain age, it becomes a lot more difficult to put things aside and focus on this.
No, that definitely makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And you talk about like the path of least resistance, being stressed about things. And I think one thing that I've noticed both of us had to unlearn this specific thing. And both of our parents like exhibit this as overworking themselves.
Yeah.
And it was difficult because sometimes I had to sit there and be like, put it down.
Yeah.
Don't open it.
Stop.
You're allowed to relax. Yeah. You're allowed to not think about work. And sometimes it really, really sucks. I'll put things away because I'm like, no, I don't want to think about work. I don't want to think about school. I need an hour to myself. Or maybe I just need to go get some sleep. And while I'm physically doing it, mentally, I'm still having the thoughts of, how can I fix this? How can I solve this problem? How can I do this? How can I do that? And it's really exhausting just having those thoughts and like physically being able to detach myself. But I know that mentally, my mom doesn't do it. Yeah. She is so overworked, and the same thing with my dad.
My dad too, yeah. Mom.
And I wish they would have a little bit more time just to not do anything, just to breathe, just to unwind. And sometimes you just need to sit there and like mindlessly scroll through anything like TikTok, social media, and that may not be what they want to do. Maybe just watch TV for like a couple hours.
Put
and
a Bollywood movie on.
No, literally just do anything but work.
Anything but work. But I think honestly, I'm proud of my parents. I think they're getting there. I'm proud of me. I think I'm getting there. I'm pushing for it. I think you got to prioritize your like TikTok time, yours lying down on the couch and watching a movie time. Yeah. I think we're getting there. I'm pretty proud of ourselves.
Yeah? Yeah. That's good.
Like, don't you think you're getting there? I think you're getting there.
I think so.
I think it's harder when you're in school. You're almost there. You're finishing up. But I do see a difference in what you were like before.
No, for sure. Like, now that I'm thinking about it, you're so right. Like, I make the conscious effort that we're going to meet up at least once a month. I know we meet up more than once a month, which I love because sometimes we really sucked at doing that.
We were awful in the middle.
It was really bad. But see, now I'm sitting there. I'm like, you know what? This podcast is a priority to me. It's a priority for my mental health. Yeah. So I'm going to make that effort to see Ghana. I'm going to make an effort to film this. Yeah. I'm going to make an effort to have these conversations. But you know, it's not like I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, I have to film this podcast. When am I going to get to doing my schoolwork? No, I'll get to it when I have to. But this is also something that's important to me. I think really prioritizing and placing importance on things that matter to me and make me feel good outside of just, I have to do this for school. I have to do this for work. I have to do this for my career. Yeah. Yes, those things are important, but that's not the only important thing in the world. Spending time with my friends, spending time with my family. Like you know, it's like huge. I didn't have like the strongest relationship with my brother growing up because he's very different from me. You know this. Yeah, I know. He's not like me at all, but I I really appreciate that he's trying to be a little bit more outgoing now. And sometimes I just, hey, let's go do this. Let's go do that. And I make a conscious effort to do it because I really want to have a better relationship with him. I want to have a stronger relationship with him. But I think it really comes down to placing importance on things that you want and prioritizing what's important to you.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think being in kind of a position where, I'm working like 10-hour days, that it's a long day. I feel energized. The work is great. I feel good. Of course, everyone has bad days. That happens. But I put so much importance on, okay, I have to see these certain friends. Haven't seen this friend in a while. Okay, cool. Let's make a plan. Let's do this. Let's do that. I just feel like, yeah, sure, it's hard. My schedule is always jam-packed, but I feel good about it. You feel energized, right? And yeah, speaking of the podcast, I think this is a great way for us to do our thing. Make sure that we're having conversations that we want to have. And we're seeing each other's face more often. My God, it was bad in the middle. But yeah, I think we're good. I think this is a good opportunity to do all the things that we want. And I have faith that in the coming months, we will get even better at doing all the things we love.
I agree.
So on that note, I think we'll wrap it up right here.
Yeah.
Moral of the story, tell yourself it's okay. Break a glass. You know what? Everyone, homework. Break a glass tonight.
Break a glass.
I think especially in an immigrant household, it's so dangerous. You're like, but just break a glass and be like, it's okay. It's cool. We're human. We make mistakes.
I used to stress about this so much. Do you remember when you would first come over to my house and my dad would be like, oh, bring water or whatever. And he's like, don't drop the glass. And I'd be like, why are you like this? Like, you're stressing. Like, sure, maybe I got some wobbly ass hands, but don't stress me out even more. Like,
for me, it was conflicting. One last thing I'll say before we wrap it up. It was conflicting because my family was very conflicting about it. I'd break a glass. They'd act like the world kind of ended and like shuffle me out of the room. Yeah. Right? And tell me to put on chappals. But then they'd be like, oh, it's good luck when glass breaks. So I'd be like, babe, this
pick
is a
a side.
Thing? This is a bad thing.
Yeah.
How do you want me to react? Yeah. And I think that truly is one of the big factors in how indecisive I've become as an adult. Yeah. So we'll leave it there. Indecision. We'll leave it on that thought of indecision. And yeah, hopefully everyone has a great week and that the seasonal depression stops raging for everybody.
Yeah, it's getting cold.
It is getting cold.
Take your vitamin D. This is something I realized. I started taking vitamin D pills last winter and I wasn't nearly as seasonally depressed as I usually am. So your vitamins help. And as much as I suck at taking mine, I'm going to tell everybody to take their vitamins.
All right. Okay, guys. Have a great rest of your week and take your vitamin D. You heard it here first.
Yes.
All right. Bye. See ya.
Bye.